Jean-Claude Camille Francois van Bannenberg, born 18th of October 1960, known professionally as Jean-Claude Van Damme, is a martial artist, actor, filmmaker, and fight choreographer. Born and raised in Brussels, Belgium. At the age of 10, his father enrolled him in martial arts classes, which led Van Damme to win several competitions. With a desire of becoming an actor, he moved to the United States in 1982, where he did odd jobs and worked on several films, until he got his big break as the lead in the martial arts film Bloodsport in 1988.
Okay.
Let's go. Jean-Claude Van Damme. Powers boost. Sudden death.
I'm going to kick Bison's ass.
You'll have to do better than that.
Okay. Yeah! Now, who wants to go home and who wants to go with me?
Jean-Claude Van Damme is the hard target.
You miss me?
From internationally acclaimed action director John Woo.
How's it feel to be hunted? You tell me!
Hard target. You win. You live.
Now what's it gonna be?
You lose. You die. It's going to be simple.
Van Damme is Lionheart.
Poe is a killer. He's not gonna let you out of that ring alive.
I can beat him.
And only one will triumph. Now I break you. International martial arts sensation Jean-Claude Van Damme in Bloodsport, the true story of the ultimate champion.
Negotiation. Teamwork. Leadership. Be careful. We may have a little fun.
So in this part of the video, we're going to be looking at Van Damme's work in TV and movies, not including voiceover work in cartoons. So in 1979, he was in a Brussels film called Woman in a Twilight Garden, where he was man in garden, uncredited, for a small part. I don't think you even see his face. Then, after moving to America, in 1984, he was in Breaking, which is his first canon film, as spectator in First Dance Sequence, also uncredited. Or canon in 1984, soldier, uncredited in Missing in Action. Then a first full part in Monaco Forever as gay karate man, where he's known as Jean-Claude Van Damme. But then we actually get to something where he's on screen. No Retreat, No Surrender, 1985, where he plays Ivan Krasinski, the Russian, which is about Jason, a Bruce Lee fan, sees his karate instructor dad beaten by martial arts thugs. They move to Seattle, where after humiliations he trains with Bruce Lee's ghost, so he can defend himself against the other thugs, the main one being Van Damme. Next up, Bloodsport, 1988, where he's Frank Dukes, another canon film, and this follows Frank Dukes, an American martial artist serving in the military, who decides to leave the army and compete in a martial arts tournament in Hong Kong, where fights to the death can occur. This was his big break, and I think he set up the fights and edited the film. Next up is Black Eagle, which you'd think was one of his films, but it isn't. This is from 1988, where he plays Andre, and Sho Kosugi is the star of the show, a CIA agent who must outrace KGB agent in searching of a secret weapon lost in the Mediterranean. So, because Van Damme was more famous in the West, he got top billing, even though he's 5 minutes in the film. Cyborg, where he plays Gibson Reichenbacker, from 1989, as a martial artist who hunts in a plague-infested urban dump of the future. Then, 1989, Kickboxer is probably his most famous role. Kurt Sloan must learn the ancient art of kickboxing Muay Thai in order to avenge his brother. Then, if you're in the UK, it's AWOL. Anywhere else, it's Wrong Bet, Lionheart, whatever you want to call it. So, this is 1990, where he's called Leon. The next French soldier begins participating in underground street fights in order to make money for his brother's family. Then 1990, Death Warrant, where he plays Lewis Burke. In a violent and corrupt prison, decorated cop Lewis Burke must infiltrate the jail to find answers to a number of inside murders. What he finds is a struggle of life and death tied to his own past. Then we get to the first of Van Damme's double portrayals, where he's Alex and Chad, in 1991's Double Impact. Two brothers are separated when their parents are murdered, but 25 years later they reunite in order to avenge their parents' death. And then probably one of his biggest films, Universal Soldier from 1992, where he plays Luke Devereaux, also known as GR-44. Soldiers who were killed during the Vietnam conflict are brought back to life in a top-secret military experiment that creates superhuman warriors. It's not the first time this franchise will appear on this list. Then we get to Nowhere to Run, 1993, where he was trying to move away from the martial arts action into more serious fare. So, Sam, an escaped convict, lands up on farmland owned by a widow. When he learns that a ruthless contractor is trying to take over the land, he helps her fight against the injustice. So, there is a couple of fights in it, so can't be too bad. You know, this was his peak time because he appeared in Last Action Hero as himself at the premiere of the Jack Slater film at the end. That's in 1993 also. So then, another one from 1993, Hard Target. A John Woo film, but another one that Van Damme took over the editing, I believe. So, a woman hires a drifter as a guide through New Orleans in search of her missing father. In the process, they discover a deadly game of cat and mouse behind his disappearance. Time Cop. In 1994, Max Walker, an officer for the security agency that regulates time travel, must fend for his life against a shady politician who's intent on changing the past to control the future. Based on a comic book. Then we get based on a video game. Street Fighter, 1994 also. Colonel Guile and various other martial arts heroes fight against the tyranny of dictator M. Bison and his cohorts. Enough said. Then we get 95's Sudden Death, Die Hard ripoff, popular in the 90s. A former fireman takes on a group of terrorists holding the vice president and other hostages during the 7th game of the NHS Stanley Cup Finals. So then he went to appear in an episode of Friends, which shows how famous he was at the time, because this was peak television. Where is it? The one after the Super Bowl Part 2. Special guest stars Jean-Claude Van Damme and Julia Roberts. He was that big at the time. Then we get to The Quest, his first film he directed. He plays Christopher Dubois. In 1996, a group of gentlemen of fortune visits a legendary lost city located in Tibet. They plan to steal a priceless statue, Golden Dragon, during a martial arts tournament, which is supposed to be the Kumite of the time. But yeah, there it is. Story by Frank Dukes, of course. And Jean-Claude Van Damme, and directed by Jean-Claude Van Damme. There it is. So then we move on to Maximum Risk, directed by Ringo Lam, where he plays two people again, Alain Moreau and Mikhail Severov. While seeking answers regarding the death of his twin brother he never knew he had, a French cop and his sibling's fiancée find themselves pursued by corrupt FBI agents and the Russian mafia. Then The Decline, 1997's Double Team with Dennis Rodman. International spy teams up with an arms dealer to escape a penal colony and rescue his family from a terrorist. Then we get to 1998's Knockoff, a Hong Kong movie. A fashion designer must join forces with a CIA agent to combat terrorism. It's probably a better film than that sounds. Then we get another French Foreign Legion film, Legionnaire, from 1998, where Alain Lefebvre. Alain is a boxer in 1925 Marseille, France. When he doesn't take the dive paid to by a mob boss, he has to split. He joins the Foreign Legion and is sent to Morocco. He makes 3 friends and they watch each other's backs. Then his first return to the Universal Soldier franchise in 1999, back as Luke Devereaux. The Universal Soldiers must fight a whole army when the military supercomputer Seth gets out of control. Then we got another one of many names. Desert Heat in the UK, Inferno in the US, I believe. So this is from 1999. A man, Jean-Claude Van Damme, drives out to the desert where some men steal his motorcycle and leave him for dead, and no longer thinks of suicide as he now has a purpose in life. Revenge and getting his bike back. We get Replicant. Apologies for the cover. Another one where he plays two roles. In 2001, he plays the Replicant and Edward Garrott. Scientists create a genetic clone of a serial killer in order to help catch the killer, teaming up with two of the cops. And in 2001, we get The Order. A playboy criminal contacts his dad after stealing a Fabergé egg. Later, it seems his dad has gone missing in Israel, so he heads there. His disappearance is linked to the religious sect, The Order. Lots of fight and chase scenes, apparently. So, this is Derailed from 2002. On an out-of-control train holding hostages and a high-tech bioweapon, Agent Christophe Van Damme becomes a one-man army to derail the terrorists and save the lives of everyone on board. Then back with Ringo Lam again. In 2003's In Hell, a man must survive prison where hardened criminals battle to the death for the warden's entertainment. Then in Wake of Death, 2004, after his family is brutally murdered, club enforcer Ben Archer wages war against the Chinese triads. Second in command from 2006. The new military attaché is also second in command at the US Embassy in Moldavia. Lose at the recent presidential election isn't letting that stop him. The president seeks protection at the US Embassy, bringing it under attack. Then we get the Hardcore, 2006 also. An army veteran assembles a team of bodyguards to protect a former boxer. Complications arise when the boxer suspects his sister may be romantically involved with the bodyguard. Until Death, 2007. Stowe is a dirty cop who's hooked on heroin and everyone dislikes him. Because of an accident, he's put in a coma and comes out of it a better person. He wakes up wanting to put things right. The Shepherd. In 2008, a former New Orleans cop battles drug cartels and ex-army special forces who are smuggling drugs from Mexico to the US through the Texas border town. Then we get to the highlight of his acting career, probably. 2008, JCVD. Jean-Claude Van Damme gets involved in a bank robbery with hostage situation and reflects about his life during it. So a great performance, Van Damme. A lot of good acting going on. Then 2009, Universal Soldier Regeneration. Back as Luc Devereaux for the third time. Terrorists kidnap the Russian Prime Minister's two kids, take Chernobyl nuclear plant, and threaten to blow up a reactor. 4 Universal soldiers go in, but no one match for the next generation. Unisol Luke, Jean-Claude Van Damme, goes in, but faces 2 next generation soldiers. 2011, Assassination Games. This one's with Scott Adkins. 2 assassins agree to work together as one tries to avenge his wife and the other collects a reward for the job. And 2012, Dragon Eyes. In St. Jude, drug dealers and corrupt cops have destroyed an urban neighborhood, but newcomer Hong has the fighting skills and moral vision to save the town from itself. Yeah, this one's advertised as a Van Damme, but he takes a second fiddle role. 2012's The Expendables 2, where he is the villain of the piece. Mr. Church reunites the Expendables for what should be an easy paycheck, but one of their men is murdered on the job. Their quest for revenge puts them deep enemy territory and up against an unexpected threat. Then Universal Soldier Day of Reckoning, 2012, with Scott Adkins again. John looks to take down Luc Devereaux after a home invasion claims his wife and daughter. The fight pits John against Andrew Scott and an army of genetically enhanced warriors. Meanwhile, he must contend with Unisol in relentless pursuit. Then we get 6 Bullets in 2012. The next mercenary known for finding missing children is hired by a mixed martial arts fighter whose daughter has been kidnapped. 2013, Welcome to the Jungle, where he plays a character called Storm. A company retreat on a tropical island goes terribly awry. He only has a small 5-minute, 10-minute role in this at the beginning and end, but I find it funny. Enemies Closer, 2013. Deep within a forest on the US-Canadian border, 2 sworn enemies must work together to escape a ruthless drug cartel held bent on retrieving a drug shipment that went missing there. Another one where Van Damme plays the bad guy. Pound of Flesh, 2015. A man's heroic attempt to help a woman in distress ends up with him waking up the next day without a kidney and plotting his revenge. We've all been there. And then 2016 returns to the Kickboxer franchise with a remake. But this time he's the master. Kickboxer is out to avenge his brother. Then 2017, Kill 'Em All. After a massive shootout, a mysterious stranger, Van Damme, arrives at a local hospital on the brink of death. Then a foreign gang brazenly comes to the hospital to hunt him down. His nurse, the sole surviving witness to the follow-up shootout, must face an FBI interrogation that unlocks a plot of international intrigue and revenge. With enough twists and turns, Kill 'Em All will keep you guessing until the final bullet is fired. He got his own TV series in 2016, Jean-Claude Van Johnson. It only lasted one season, and it was about Jean-Claude Van Damme lived two lives, Van Damme the actor and Van Johnson as a secret agent. Then more Kickboxer, with the sequel to the remake, Kickboxer Retaliation in 2018. Right after winning a fight in Las Vegas, Kurt Sloan is sedated and taken to a prison in Bangkok, where he is forced to fight a 6'10" giant for freedom and $1 million. But this will require some intense training. 2018, Blackwater, reteaming with Dolph Lundgren. A deep cover operative awakens to find himself in a CIA black site on a submarine. Lucas, 2018. A nightclub bouncer in his 50s who's taken punches literally and figuratively struggles to raise his 8-year-old daughter. 2019 we had We Die Young. Lucas, a 14-year-old boy inducted into gang life in Washington, D.C., is determined that his 10-year-old brother won't follow him in the same path. When an Afghan war veteran comes into the neighborhood, an opportunity arises. And finally, The Last Mercenary, which was a French film from 2021. A mysterious former secret agent must urgently return to France, where his estranged son is falsely accused of arms and drug trafficking by the government, following a blunder by an overzealous bureaucrat and a mafia operation. So yeah, a lot of his recent output is not up to the standards of the early work, but whose is. So now we'll have a look at some fellow YouTubers. They give their top 5 favourite Van Damme films.
Be unafraid, my noble jungle dweller.
Your brother mean no harm.
What's happening, tapeoids? How's everybody doing? It's Rob's Vintage Video, and we're back again with another video for our good buddy Gareth at Video Tasties, who has created Jean-Claude Van Damme month and has asked me to rank my top 5 JCVD flicks for you in a video as a part of a collaboration video that you're watching right now. So, of course, I said yes, and let's get into it. I just want to say that this was a super tough thing to do because I love all his movies, and to put just 5 of them at the top, it was a little bit tough for me, so I had to think about it for a bit, but I got it done, so let's get into it. My number 5 is No Retreat, No Surrender. In 1985, starring Kurt McKinney and JCVD as a bad guy, which is pretty cool. And the dude like summons the ghost of Bruce Lee to learn how to fight, which is pretty cool. So number 5, No Retreat, No Surrender. Up next is my number 4, an awesome sci-fi movie from 1994, Time Cop. Jean-Claude Van Damme plays an officer who's policing time travel. I always found that a really cool concept. So that's number 4. Up next at number 3 is another movie that has a pretty cool concept, 1989's Cyborg. JCVD doesn't play the Cyborg, but it's still pretty cool. This movie was made from salvaged pieces of another movie, which gave it a cool factor as well. So that's number 3, Cyborg. Coming up next at number 2 is a movie that I could have easily put number 1, but the number 1 wedges it out just that much, and you'll find out why. That's number 2, 1989's Kickboxer. I love the music in this movie. I love Jean-Claude Van Damme drunk and dancing in this movie. I love Tong Po kicking a pillar and a ceiling falling down in this movie. Wicked movie. Number 2, Kickboxer. And I guess you figured it out. My number 1 is Bloodsport from 1988. I love this movie. I like it just a little bit more than Kickboxer because I saw it in the theater. This was the second time I've ever seen Jean-Claude Van Damme after No Retreat, No Surrender. And I thought this movie was cool as hell. So I always end up coming to Bloodsport as my number 1. That's it. 1988's Bloodsport. So that's my top 5 JCVD flicks for Jean-Claude Van Damme month. I want to say thank you, Gareth, for inviting me and always inviting me on your channel and in your videos. I really enjoy it and I appreciate it. Rob's Vintage Video, if you like VHS, check it out. Stop by the shop anytime. And I will see you next time, Tapeoids. Take it easy.
Hello, Dan here from Dan's Movie Cave. Hope everyone's doing well. Big thank you to Gareth for putting together this video compilation of us sharing our top 5 favourite movies starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. I couldn't resist taking part because I've been a huge fan of Van Damme for well over 30 years. And personally always lean to him more than kind of the likes of Arnie, Sly or Chuck Norris. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love them guys and their work, but the mixture of Van Damme's martial arts and action set pieces, gunplay and them dance moves in Kickboxer, and not to mention as well a kind of 10-year period of really kind of, for me, top draw action movies. I just always favour them. So we're going to start this off with number 5, so we're going to count down, and it is the Cannon movie Cyborg. For me, a very underappreciated post-apocalyptic action thriller with a very kind of unnerving soundtrack, but it's brilliant, and there's a fantastic story behind the making of this, and kind of props and costumes used, and also a fantastic story that I only learned in recent months about the main villain's voice, and he's a great villain. But yes, so many memorable moments. I always think of its time it's one of the best post-apocalyptic movies. That's Cyborg. Next one up, Van Damme playing twins Chad and Alex. Double Impact. Wow, I remember when I rented this one out. I think it was 4 times I managed to watch this in a space of 24 hours. I wasn't old enough to be watching movies like this, but I just loved them. And I never wanted to return the VHS of this, but Van Damme plays these twin brothers who are separated a few months old. Very different upbringings. One's more hard-edged, one's more mollycoddle, but they're brought together later in life and learn their parents was brutally murdered, so they avenge that. And this is a perfect mix of martial arts, gunplay, especially Van Damme playing Alex, dual wielding pistols, rolling along the floor, sliding along the floor. Fantastic stuff. Next one up, I had to wait quite a few weeks to watch this because someone who rented it at my local VHS store, who I don't know but I've never forgiven, they didn't return it for 3 weeks, and we had our name down. I remember getting the call and I literally run round there with my mum. I couldn't wait to watch this, and I'm talking Universal Soldier, where Van Damme goes up against Dolph Lundgren. They serve in the Vietnam War. No spoilers here, but they get killed and then brought back in the 90s as these super soldiers. So it jumps forward to the 90s as these super soldiers who slowly start to remember the past and end up going up against each other. And again, another brilliant action set pieces, gunplay, explosions, martial arts, brilliant final fight, great fight in a diner as well. Van Damme running through kind of drywall. Brilliant stuff. The top 2 does get quite tricky because I think my number 1 pick is more for sentimental reasons. It could change at any given day. If I watch them both right now, they could switch. But I'm going with, not Time Cop, I'm going with Bloodsport at number 2. Yes, story of Frank Dukes and the Kumite. Many conspiracies, many opinions around this movie, but I kind of tend to ignore that. Even though I like listening to it, I just go into it as it is a fantastic martial arts movie. Van Damme's breakout role, again, another fantastic story behind this, and it has the great Bolo Young as kind of that end boss in this. Very, very memorable. And a young Forrest Whitaker as well. My number 1 pick, which people who know me probably will know what it is, but it's Kickboxer. Yes, I alluded to the dance moves earlier in this. I love that scene, but this movie, Van Damme learns Muay Thai to avenge his brother's brutal beatdown and goes up against the menacing and fantastic Tong Po, who's played by an actor who I've just gone blank to his name, but he features in quite a few Van Damme movies. They're actually very good friends. But yeah, Kickboxer is my number 1 Van Damme movie. So there you have it. Big thank you again to Gareth for having me on for my top 5 favourite movies starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. Take care, everyone.
I'm holding the talking stick. Talking stick attack.
G'day, it's the Ginger Ninja here, all the way from the land down under, and I'm here to talk about my top 5 Jean-Claude Van Damme films. So firstly, thank you very much to Gareth from Video Tasties for inviting me along to do this. Now, all these movies were released during the peak of Van Damme's career, and they're often regarded as his most iconic and successful works. They showcase his martial arts prowess, his physical abilities, but also his ability to captivate audiences with his performances. Now I'm going to kick it straight off and we're going to get into number 5, Lionheart. This film has a number of different names, but it's also more commonly known as Wrong Bet. In this film, Van Damme plays a French foreign legionnaire who goes AWOL to help his brother's family. He becomes involved in an underground fight scene to raise money for them. This film, it's got some really good intense fight scenes, emotional depth, and of course, Van Damme's trademark splits. It's often regarded as one of his most engaging stories, but also his most charismatic performance. Now, my 4th choice is what I consider to be a criminally underrated sci-fi action film, and that is Time Cop. Now, this follows the story of a time-traveling police officer, played by Van Damme, who must prevent a corrupt politician from altering history for personal gain. Time Cop blends martial arts action with time travel elements, creating an entertaining and fast-paced movie that showcases Van Damme's agility, combat skills, and of course his trademark splits in the kitchen scene. Yeah. Now, my 3rd one was a tough one, because I kind of went back and forth between my 3rd choice and my 2nd choice, but in the end, my 3rd choice has to be the phenomenal Universal Soldier. Now, this is again a sci-fi action film that revolves around reanimated soldiers who regain their memories and emotions. Van Damme's character, Luc Devereaux, is a standout in this film and again highlights Van Damme's skills as a martial artist, but also his ability to perform intense fight scenes, but also display emotion with it when he gains his emotions back. Even the comedic timing of some of his scenes. The one that stands out for me is the diner fight scene, where he's just wanting food. Doesn't know anything about money, but more food. The fight scene in that, plus that, and let's not negate his dynamic chemistry with Dolph Lundgren in this film, which only adds to the excitement. Now, I said I had trouble between 3 and 2. My 2nd choice, Kickboxer. Now, this is considered an absolute classic in the martial arts genre, and in this movie, Van Damme portrays Kurt Sloan. He's a skilled martial artist seeking revenge for his brother's paralysis inflicted by a ruthless fighter. Now, Kickboxer is known for its memorable training montages, intense fight sequences, and of course, Jean-Claude Van Damme's impressive dancing skills, in which he also does his splits. And it, like I said, it's considered an absolute classic in this genre, so you cannot have a top 5 without having this film in it. It didn't quite get to number 1 though, and that's because my top pick for Jean-Claude Van Damme's top 5 films of all time is none other than Hard Target. This one came out in 1993 and is directed by none other than John Woo. This action thriller stars Jean-Claude Van Damme as a down-on-his-luck merchant who becomes a target of a group of wealthy individuals hunting humans for sport. This film combines Van Damme's martial arts skills with John Woo's signature style of stylized action and gunplay, and it results in a high-octane and visually impressive film. Plus, it's got Lance Henriksen. Who could ask for more? So there you have it. That is my personal top 5 choices for Van Damme films. Hopefully you guys enjoyed these films as well as much as I did. I can go back and watch these anytime. So thank you very much to Gareth for doing this. Hope you all have a great day. Bye.
are going to let out the primal scream to unleash the warrior inside us.
Hey guys, this is Jeff, aka 101 Bronson, participating in Gareth's top 5 Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, big compilation video for Jean-Claude Van Damme. And I've been told to keep this, unlike some other videos that I might have done for Gareth. I've been told to keep this as brief as I possibly can. So, you know what, we'll go ahead. Number 5, Gareth, you're going to like this. Nowhere to Run, and I got the original tape that I had as a kid. I know Gareth, obviously, Video Tasties, he's a big tape collector. There you go, there's a tape, my friend. Yeah, I have, of course, the Blu-ray from 88 Films. Get this out of here. We have the real thing, right, Gareth? No. Nowhere to Run, underrated film. I love Jean-Claude Van Damme. I love this film. I like that, you know, this is where he really took a chance on his acting. And then we have Double Impact. Love Double Impact, one of my all-time favorite action films. Gotta love Double Van Damme. Great action scene in this that totally were sort of a sign of things to come with another Van Damme film that is in my top 5. Hard Target. I mean, in this film you sort of have that Hong Kong action style because the film takes place in Hong Kong. You have Van Damme dual-wielding guns and stuff. Well, Hard Target is, you know, of course, John Woo's immortal classic. His first American film with JCVD, full of all these great action scenes. It's absolutely amazing. Gotta love Hard Target, one of my favorites. Now my number 2, it's might as well be interchangeable with my number 1, to be honest. It really depends on what time of day that you ask me, but Bloodsport is number 2 at this moment. I mean, if you wake me up later on tonight, I might say this is my favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme film. But as of right now, I am going to say Bloodsport is my my number 2. I can't fault anybody for having it at their number 1. Like I said, it's very easy to place it there. But number 1, I have to go with Kickboxer. 9 times out of 10, I will say. 9 times out of 10, I will say this is my absolute favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. I don't know, man. It's you know, it's such a great film, and now at this moment I sort of have an even more greater affinity for it, because thanks to Gareth, I had the opportunity recently, a couple of months ago, as I'm recording this, as the Jean-Claude Van Damme video will appear. I recently had the opportunity to actually do a watch party on Kickboxer with Gareth and with Rob from Rob's Vintage Videos, and David Worth, the man who directed Kickboxer, and he also was the cinematographer on Bloodsport. And that was a great opportunity for me. There were some issues during the stream where Mr. Worth, you couldn't really see the screen. There were audio issues and this and that, but nonetheless, it was a great experience, and I will always be very, very grateful for Gareth for providing that opportunity. So, you know, I got to watch Kickboxer and ask the director of that film, which is, let's face it, one of my favorite films. I got to ask him some behind the scenes stuff, some questions, and he answered them. He was very patient, I have to say, very kind of him to do so. He was only supposed to be on the stream for like the first half, but he actually did remain for the entire film, which, you know, he was a good sport about it. Really, really great. Anyway, let's quickly recap, because I only have about a minute left. Kickboxer is my favorite, although interchangeable with Bloodsport, my number 2. Difficult to choose, but Kickboxer is such a great one. Hard Target at number 3. Action classic, the testosterone classic. Double Impact, fantastic. Nowhere to Run, get this out of here. We have the real version, man. The VHS tape right there. I'm not a tape collector, but I still have a few tapes from back in the day. So that's my top 5. Now, if Gareth will permit me a little bit of self-plugging, I have done a top 10 on my channel 2-3 years ago. Go check that out for more Van Damme, for more, you know, of me sharing my passion for Van Damme. Anyway, guys, that's my entry. That's my video. That's my participation in this video. Anyway, take care, keep punching, and we'll see you real soon. I can't wait to see the complete version and see how many people will participate in this, because I know Van Damme is a popular actor. Anyway, guys, take care.
Rothschild, aka Stryker Hardcastle, aka Francois Van Varenberg, aka Shlomo Rabinowitz. You, sir, under arrest by the United States Navy for impersonating an officer.
La leçon se termine ici.